Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Goer Live, where we bring you some of the most interesting people and stories in the sport of snowmobiling. On this edition, we get to talk to arguably the most talented photographer in the history of snowmobiling. Wayne Davis is a true icon in the sport. From action photography of new sleds to dynamic racing action, intriguing custom photography to behind-the-scenes studio work, his amazing photos have captured the spirit and passion of the sport for well over 3 decades. As it says in his profile on the International Snowmobile Hall of Fame website, Wayne's work has captured and preserved the joy and excitement that is snowmobiling and snowmobile racing for future generations. He's been knocked down, run over, caught in avalanches, lost in whiteouts, and suffered frozen fingers, and keeps coming back for more with a smile on his face. I'm lucky enough to call him my friend. He's one of the first people I met in this sport when I was hired 29 years ago, and he's pretty much shot every cover on Snowgoer magazine since it was relaunched in 1990. And now I'm going to bring in my friend, Mr. Wayne Davis, live from his studio in Plymouth, Minnesota. How you doing, Wayne?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you for joining us. You know, we put out a call to action on Facebook asking people who they'd want to hear from and whose story they'd like to hear. And a lot of people have mentioned Wayne Davis. And, you know, it's one of those things that I've known you forever. I mean, you're one of the first people I met in this crazy industry. And, you know, so maybe I take for granted all the things you've taught me and all the great stories you have to tell. So it was great to see that other people wanted to hear your story. So
yeah, I was honored, really honored to hear that.
Very good. Well, let's just get to work then. Let's jump back to the very beginning. So you're a young boy growing up in southeast Minnesota. How did you end up in this whole snowmobile thing from the very start?
My Uncle Marvin actually raised me for part-time. Yeah. Had a Polaris dealership. He got his first snowmobile like back in '62. You know, so he has a '62 Snow Traveler that he had got way back then. And
wow, he was right on the ground floor.
Oh yeah. So he was one of the earliest Polaris dealers ever. You know, so I went and lived with him part-time, and so that's where I got to know snowmobiles and my love for snowmobiles. And I'm so fortunate. You know, I learned a ton of things about life and snowmobiling and so on through Uncle Marv, and that's pretty much where this love of snowmobiling started.
So you were doing some stuff at the dealership, and soon you found yourself or got yourself an opportunity to go racing. Tell that story.
Yeah. So I wanted to go racing in 72, I think it was 73. I worked at the dealership and was able to get my own snowmobile, bought my own snowmobile. Nice. And I wanted to go racing, and it was, you know, kept explaining to me, Uncle Marv did, that it was just too expensive. And so I worked out a deal with him to take me racing I had to make a promise that I'd never smoke or drink, which has stuck with me to this day. Then we went snowmobile racing, and he was right. He kept saying it was going to be way too expensive. And after I got older and I got more into it, I found out just how expensive racing was. And so I'm fortunate to have been led into it by a person that knew what he was talking about and kind of guided me in with realistic values and so on.
Yeah, that racing thing hasn't gotten any cheaper yet either, has it?
Not at all.
So share a couple memories from your racing days before you got the camera in your hand. What sticks with you after all these years of going around various tracks?
What sticks with me the most is not maybe so much time on the track, as time with my friends and mechanics and brothers and so on in between the races. Mm-hmm. You know, times in the shop that we were working on it, or traveling, you know, let's say we were on the East Coast tour where you would go to Maine and to Peterborough, Ontario, and Vermont, you know, just we'd be on the road for weeks and weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Darcy Ewing and Todd Elmer, and, you know, and those are times that kind of stick in my mind about my racing days, the friendships and the behind the scenes stories that we had. And, that's what I remember the most, actually.
That's something that I've talked to about other people in the racing community and in some previous videos that I think to an outsider they may not realize what a tight group the racing community
Mm-hmm.
is. Oftentimes the kids are there with mom and dad and maybe it's an uncle who's setting up the sled and it's their best buddy who travels with them for a couple weeks. But then even among the racers and the race teams, you're kind of traveling with the same people and it ends up being kind of its own family.
Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of it. And that's one of the rare sports that happens,
Yeah.
that it's family and family driven, if you will.
Absolutely.
That it's a beautiful thing, that happens that way. And again, I think a lot of people would say that the same thing I just said, that it's the memories of being around those people in the family that they remember.
Yeah, and it's still that way to this day. I mean, even you go to ERX, which is a track here in the Twin Cities, now regularly, and it's families. It's still a family group, even with the people running the kids 120 sleds and stuff. So
yeah,
it's
wonderful.
It's the gift that keeps giving.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of gifts that keep giving, it was actually a crash that led to your photography career. Share that story with our listeners.
Yeah, it was. On the East Coast tour, we were racing in Peterborough, Ontario, and it was a real warm. It was like a Friday night racing type of thing, and it was a real warm night. So the pit area and so on was, of course, everything would be in ice, was melting, and it was round robin racing back in those days of 340X and 440X snow pro days, and.
Mm-hmm.
And so you only had limited amount of time to work on your machines before you had to pull back out for the next round robin heat. And I had put my gloves down in the pit area down so my knees wouldn't get so wet on my suit. And we were working on the suspension and the track, and came time for me to go out. And so I quickly had to just flop the snowmobile back over, put my gloves on, and away I went. And when I got the first turn, my glove was so wet that it slipped off the handlebar, and I just holding on with my right hand, and it made a hard right turn right into the wall and broke both my wrists. And it was a pretty traumatic time in my life, that having to heal up from that. I had to have multiple surgeries on them and so on. And
does not sound good, but how does that end up putting a camera in your hand and having you become the best shooter that's ever been in snowmobiling?
Yeah, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, that I still wanted to go to the races and had the desire to go to the races even while I was healing. And my brother had actually bought a camera outfit that he just wasn't using anymore. He needed some money. And he said, well, if you'll loan me the $60 or whatever it was, I'll let you hold on to this camera outfit until I pay you back. Well, he never paid me back. So I was like, well, I might as well learn, take this out and take this with me. And so when I was at the races, I, had access to the infield and so on, pretty much because I was a racer. And I just started taking pictures of my friends while they were out there, and just learned and got better and better and better. And then it was in '82. Jim Kettinger from Yamaha. I had given some pictures to Tim Bender and Bobby Donahue and so on, and they had given them to Jim Kettinger, their race coordinator. And Jim searched me out at the track and said, hey, your pictures are really good. Can we hire you? Can we use, first it was, can we use your pictures? They needed autograph stock. And of course I said, yeah, sure,
Right.
And so then the very next race, I searched out the Yamaha guys, and here they're sitting there autographing the pictures that I had just made, and as their autograph stock. And it was just amazing to me to see that. And then Jim Kettinger said, well, your pictures are so good, we want to sign you to a contract to follow along with the race team. And And again, I was still kind of healing from my broken wrists, and um, said yes. And I'm so glad that that happened, because it's that was the start of my photography career, professional photography career. Of course, I had taken pictures for years before this, as you know, even as a young man, I took pictures and so on. But that's how I got my start as a professional photographer.
Not to get too wonky on any of this stuff, but you know, people talk about how you're supposed to frame up a photo and different things like that, and there's ways to be trained to be a photographer. But in those early days, were you just shooting what felt good to you? Had you gone to any classes about having composition of a photo or anything like that?
No classes. Of
Yeah.
course, now that I think about it, I did take photography class in high school,
Okay.
a photography, so there must have been something in there, that the rule of thirds, if you will,
Yeah.
must have been learned at that time. But pretty much it was um, learning as I went.
Okay.
One of my advantages that to try to make it cheaper for me to learn. Again, we're talking film days, so
Right.
it was way pre-digital. So I would roll my own film. I'd buy film 100 foot at a time and roll them into these cassettes, and that was cheaper per roll. And then I learned to process my own film, and I had an enlarger, so I'd print my own film to make a final print cheaper. And as I was pretty soon, I realized that my enlarger is always way up on the top, so why is so I'm losing quality.
Okay.
So that taught me I need to get closer, or I need a longer lens, and so on. So the quality kept going up and up and up as I learned. And so then I liked it better when you had a little more room in front of the machine instead of to the back, right? So it had a lead into it. And so I just learned these little things as I went along that helped into my photography career,
Okay.
just by picking up some things here and there.
So Yamaha hires you to chase around the race team for a winter.
Mhm.
How fast does that accelerate to the point where you're doing stuff for the magazine company that I work at, to where you're doing, snowmobile manufacturer, regular photo shoots for their entire product line? How does that progress?
Yeah, it was very fast.
Yeah.
I would say, so I started shooting for them like in December
Okay.
for Yamaha. And the next spring, Jimmy Dick Hendricks, from Ellert Publishing there,
Hmm.
actually, even I'll back up. CJ Ramstead actually was, started hiring me for Snow Week and so
Okay.
on. And there was even a guy before that, when it was web publishing, that would hire me to go around to races. And so that kind of started me into the magazine portion of it. But what Dick Hendricks was after me for was to shoot road reports.
Okay.
He said, well, if you can make a snowmobile going that fast look that good, he says it wouldn't be any problem for you shooting machines that aren't going near as fast and so on. And would I be interested in doing that? Well, that has led to all these multiple years of shooting for Goer, which I believe I'm into 40th year of that. So that's pretty amazing,
Yeah.
so then, besides the magazines, so then Yamaha had me start shooting some of their brochure stuff, and then it worked into Polaris. I met Marlis Knutson, and she was real instrumental in having me start shooting their snowmobile stuff as well. Then it got into ATV stuff and then watercraft stuff. So as they progressed, I progressed with them also, and then it just pretty soon it led in Yamaha had a Yamaha Toyota Challenge.
Yes, I
And
remember
so
that.
you'd win a Toyota truck. And so that led to doing some work with Toyota, doing that poster for that particular challenge and so on. So it just kind of snowballs, into aftermarket companies and clothing companies and so on that, really enjoy all aspects of it.
Right. There's and for our listeners, if you've seen a single copy of any of our magazines in the last, again, 35 plus years, the action photos were all taken by Wayne. If you've seen, so many, you've shot for pretty much all the snowmobile manufacturers over the years and stuff, and so his stamp is on a lot of things. One of the I've long said that I firmly believe that you're the best power sports photographer ever, and specifically the snowmobile photographer, for many reasons. You have an eye for a lot of things. You can pick out stuff. I'll see, just a curve and a trail and a couple trees, and it doesn't look that interesting to me. And then I get back to photos that you take, and it's like, oh my Lord, that's beautiful. I can't believe that was the same place. But you've developed that skill. But aside from all of that, back to the question, one of the things that to me, look from the outside in, it separates you from so many other people that have done stuff over the years is just your amazing passion for this sport. And that's why I wanted to start talking about how you got into racing and all this other stuff. How important do you think that is, and how is that reflected in the images you capture, the fact that you've lived it, you've done it, and you have a passion for it?
It's a very big part of the final image. When I'm riding down a trail, I'm kind of visualizing myself, how I lean, how I move, when I accelerate, and that kind of stuff. So then I want to have the person viewing my photographs be able to put themselves into my shoes. If they look at one of my photographs, they say, that could be me.
Okay.
That's me. That's how I ride. That's, so there's such beautiful places out there.
Yeah.
That I just want to capture that so that, again, people can put themselves on the saddle, in that image, or say, I want to go there. I want to do that. I want, and so on, to invite them in by looking at the photograph and making it interesting and beautiful and so on. So, I just have a knack for being able to visualize at the time where the light is right and so on. Or I'm going to come back here this afternoon because it'll really look good with the light coming from this way and so on. And then I've been blessed with wonderful riders my whole career of the people I've worked with. They're just amazing, and they contribute to the photograph just as much because they make it look so good in the way they ride and so on. So,
yeah. You'd mentioned earlier how you had started out, with racing, and then you got into the product stuff that, the catalog type stuff, or the manufacturer's photo shoots, and you've done a lot of stuff in the studio, whether it's for us, whether it's for the manufacturers, whether it's for aftermarket companies, or well beyond. Talk about the thrills and the challenges of each of those subsets. What's which one's most thrilling, which one's most tedious? Well, take it however you want to take it.
Yeah, to me, it's all thrilling.
Okay.
Whether it's in the studio or on location, I just love it so much. That it's all thrilling, and it's all what I love to do. But each does have their own challenges and rewards. Oh, sure. To see, for example, a brochure, on location brochure, come together with all the moving parts of it and so on. And then you got the weather involved and, personalities and, getting things there at the right time. And as well as a lot of them are very, of course, we're so far ahead of time in production on the photo shoots that we have to guard everything so carefully and so on.
Yeah.
So there's many, many challenges, but how it all comes together is magic, that everybody does their thing. And so I love the thrill of that, the location and shooting brochures, and whether it's watercraft or snowmobiles or ATVs, whatever. The studio stuff is a lot more. You have a control over a lot more things.
Mm-hmm.
You can make the lighting exactly the way you want to, and as long as the timing of the machines arriving on time, or the parts or whatever, if that goes smoothly, you usually can kind of control the days and so on. I love racing photography, but that probably has the most challenges in that, you can't control snow dust, and things like that. So, it can be really challenging shooting racing with the weather and locations, as far as being able to get to the corners the way you want to make a good shot that's maybe somebody else isn't getting, and so on. But again, I've had a really great luck, if you will, and being able to be in the right spot at the right time for many, many, many photographs at racing and at the races. And but yeah, again, that's one of the things that are really near and dear to my heart is the racing.
In the races, it's funny, those people driving the sleds aren't there for us, are they? They're on their own gig, and so whatever line they're choosing or whatever, we can't say, can you go a little bit to the right on your next pass, and we've got a good light coming in there. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
The studio stuff, if I can hang back on that for a second, probably with Photoshop and some of the modern tools that are out there now, probably a lot of things can be created on screens. But I mean, some of the stuff that you've been involved with just for our magazine company, whether it's, kind of building a cabin in your shop for a photo shoot we did with clothing, or some of the things you've done with dry ice to kind of create a ground cloud around our snowmobile of the year or whatever. It's amazing the art that can be created in a studio that maybe to the person seeing the end photo, it's kind of a mystical looking sled, but they don't know what went into making it look mystical.
Sure. That's absolutely true. And again, I can revert back to my film days, which half my career was shot on film.
Oh, yeah.
And, when you had to shoot film and make it look there was no Photoshop to recreate things, to add in ice underneath the machine, or take this person out, or move things around. What you shot is what you got. And so thankfully I had the opportunity to learn the craft during that time, so that when it did get to be the digital age, it just made everything so much simpler. It still has its challenges, very much so, but I was able to learn how to deal with making the final image better up front, so that then it opened the door a little bit more for a little more creativity, as far as, well, if we could do the dry ice thing and then add some lights here and there, and when to use grid lights and when to use big soft boxes, things like that. It just opens up the doors a little bit more to the creativity of it, because you can kind of think of, well, we can add this in later, because it's just going to be so time consuming to do it up front here. So in post production, we can just open that shadow up a little bit more, and so on. So it's really made things easier. The digital age has, but I love that creativity of doing photo shoots in the studio.
The kind of going off on a tangent here, but one of the most, anybody who lived through snowmobiling in the late 80s, early 90s saw an image you took of Tim Bender leaning way off a Yamaha with a smeared background and stuff, and it's just one of the truly epic shots in all of snowmobiling. I mean, that thing was everywhere. Could you, I know it's a long story and we don't have forever, but could you kind of tell how you made that background speed smear and how that worked, just in layman's terms?
That was one of my would probably be one of my favorite photo shoots.
Yeah.
Tim Bender was racing NASCAR at the time, so we knew we were going to have Tim in the studio for half an hour or so, because he was just in between cities in a flight. So Yamaha wanted to make this poster, Formula 3 poster, and they just pretty much turned me loose on it. And so I went and bought a bunch of lumber and built almost an A-frame that's laying on its side, so to build the bank oval. And so it was out of plywood and 2x4s and so on. So the back part of it was about 3 feet high. So the machine was going to be sitting at an angle as if he was on a bank track. And so we wired it, or, tied his machine down with bolts and wires and so on to the plywood. And we had seamless paper, white seamless paper underneath that. And we spray painted it somewhat to look like ice. And then we put a sheet of plastic over top of that. And so his sled was sitting up on pins a little bit. So we were able to move this plastic underneath it to give a little bit of motion and so on. And so we got that all set up, and then we built a second set that had as high as the background was a shelf, if you will, that we'd put the hay bales on, and that was all on wheels. So then we put the Yamaha banner back behind the hay bales. And so during the 4-second exposure that it was going to be to create the motion of it, 2 people were pulling the background through. They had to go from here to here in that 4 seconds. Tim had to hold perfectly still for those 4 seconds. And then we had people on each side of moving the plastic underneath the machine back and forth. And we had a person counting out the timing of it, so everybody knew where we were at with it.
Yeah.
And I was shooting that on 4x5 camera. So again, this is back in the film days. Mm-hmm. And just large format camera, and it was so cool to put all that together. But the results were phenomenal.
And now people can do all sorts of strange things with their iPhones or whatever, but to be able to coordinate all that and have to do it on an extremely small time budget where Tim's there for just a short period of time, then he's gone. That's incredible what had to happen to create that, but the end result was fantastic.
Right. Yeah, it was. So we built the stage, for a couple days before the shoot, got it all ready for that. When Tim arrived, we were going to go in the studio. And so, yeah, it was all created, and it fooled many, many people that they didn't know that was a studio shot.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty of it.
And just an iconic image. Mm-hmm. So back to talking about racing and being at the track. I've always been amazed at what a connection you have with the racers. Whether it's just knowing everybody's name, knowing everybody's style, just being able to get a feel for it. But also, if I've seen you, if somebody gets injured in a turn, you're often the first time person who's there to check on them. Where does that come from? That one-to-one connection you have with individual racers over the years?
I kind of think that comes from my dad.
Okay.
He just had a fantastic ability to relate to people. And it's not something I can explain, but he was everybody's friend. Everybody knew him, everybody's friend. And I kind of think I got that from him a little bit as far as the personality. And but I feel it's kind of a coordinated effort between them and me.
Okay.
They're going to make me look good, and I'm going to hopefully try to make them look good.
That's fair.
And I've, to build those relationships only improves that. But I genuinely care about their well-being and that they have what they need. And if I can provide a service for them to help them out with images or so on to further their career, well, okay, here you go.
Right.
That's something I kind of pride myself in giving back to people. I've given out thousands of photographs to up and coming racers and so on to help get their career started and so on. And I consider them all friends, and I generally care about them and their well-being,
Yeah.
and they're doing something that I love too. And whether it's on the racing side or the photography side, it's the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
you can tell it's authentic. I mean, even though you say they're helping you, you're helping them. At the end of the day, whenever I've seen you interact with these people, it's always truly authentic that you're there helping out however you can. You're not,
absolutely,
working an
absolutely.
angle, so to speak. Um, so we've talked about some of the good stuff, some of the incredible photo shoots, some of the neat stuff you've created over the years, and snowmobilers, again, if they've been around for any years, they've seen your great work in various places. But it hasn't all been glamorous. You've been run over, you've been caught in avalanches, you've been hit by a sled and thrown into some semis and carried off in a stretcher. Why do you keep coming back? What do you know? How do you weigh the risks and the rewards of doing this somewhat risky behavior at times?
Yeah, it is. It really is. Um, I love what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a part of it. I way back. Wow, this is Bessemer, Michigan. A fellow photographer that was 10 feet away from me was hit by a snowmobile and hurt very, very, very badly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I went. I remember after getting her loaded into the ambulance and everything, it was horrible.
Yeah.
I remember going and sitting on a hay bale and kind of saying, "What if that would have been me?
Yeah.
Is this worth it?" And after a few minutes of evaluating it, I'm like, "No, it is. It is worth it." So carry on. And though a lot of that stuff happened, a lot of the things you mentioned happened in a short period of time.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of my career where nothing happened to me, and then a few brief years where it all seemed to be happening to me.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew, this isn't this way normally. This
Yeah.
is things just caught up with me, if you will. And these days, I kind of refer back to the One Republic song, with every broken bone I say I lived. And I'm living my life, and come what may. If this is the way I'm going to be taken out, well, it's unfortunate, but I'm going to live my life each and every day, and come what may, and we'll just keep moving on through it. I do
That
love what I do. Yeah.
that said, for any of you aspiring wannabe Wayne Davises out there, Wayne wears some safety equipment. He isn't out there just standing there in a loose fitting jacket and hoping to look good for if the TV cameras catch him. You've got your chest protector on. You've got I believe you wear shin guards and knee pads and everything. So it's there's ways to limit your risk certainly, but
Absolutely.
it's still a risk.
It is, yeah. And I'd advise anybody interested in doing this to think about the safety first, because that is critical. Your families, the people that care about you rely on you to be safe. And if you're going to do it, look into getting that equipment, so that you're taking care of every opportunity you can to be safe. No picture's worth, losing your life over.
Right. Okay, let's change topics. Give me the top 3 Wayne Davis most beautiful places to shoot photography. What sticks to your mind with something like that?
Well, what sticks in my mind is did a Can-Am shoot in Mexico. That was really cool. We got to run the Baja route in side-by-sides. That was cool and beautiful. And then the St. Thomas Islands for a photo shoot there, and then many places like Jackson Hole, Togety, Cook City, many places like that. But
there's so many dynamic places in the West, and just a quick personal story. As you know, we used to have some ATV magazines that I was also the editor of, and it was about a year after we sold off those magazines as a company that Can-Am had that event in the Baja Peninsula, and that's a place I've always wanted to be. And then of course, I didn't get an invite to that one. Life's just not fair.
Right. Oh, that was really a cool event.
Okay, then give me your favorite 3 races of all time, or race events.
Favorite races for me would be Eagle River, of course, hands down. I just love it there. I get chills every time I drive into Eagle River, whether it's summer or winter or whatever. But
I'm the same.
Love that one. One of my favorite races was I mentioned before the Toyota Yamaha Challenge that they had, and Steve Houle won all 3 of them, the trucks and the sleds, and he won all 3 times they had it.
The snowplows.
The snowball and everything. The last time he won it at Thief River Falls was the most incredible race I'd ever seen in my life.
Really?
It was incredible. He had jumped the start, so he had to face backwards at the start, and he's in there with Tim Bender, Bobby Donahue, just the big names. He's got a huge challenge in front of him, and now he has to start facing backwards. And I got this incredible story of the race, but I'll keep it quick. He came back and won the race. Most incredible race I'd ever seen in my life. And so that was one of my favorite races.
Okay.
I always loved to go to Canterbury and Duluth when they had the races there. Was always special.
Yes.
On Thanksgiving weekend and so on. Mostly any racetrack, all the locations I've been to are great, but those are probably my favorites.
Yeah, and so some of them that I don't want to set you up for too big of a negative here, but some people outside of our world think would be the ultimate ones to go to sometimes really aren't, say like an X Games or something like that, where it's more about something else and less about the competition. Those ones aren't nearly as fun as, say, like the Grand Prix de Valcourt, where the entire town rallies around this event. There's just a different vibe at those things, those type of events. One might get more TV coverage, but the other one, to be there live, is more fulfilling to me anyway.
Yeah, the X Games are great, but there's so many challenges and a lot of pressure because the images have to go out immediately, and so they're really long days and it's real hassle, lots of hassles. Of can't be here, can't be there, got to do this, got to do that, and where the other places it seems like they want you there. Right. The community wants you there, the racers want you there, everybody involved is happy you're there, and so on. Where some events that's not necessarily true.
Absolutely. It isn't. So the reason a lot of people are seeing or hearing this presentation is because they're snowmobilers, and you're the world famous Wayne Davis snowmobile photographer. But a lot of people don't know all the other things you've done with photography. You'd mentioned your trips to Baja and other places earlier, but kind of expand on that. Some of the wonderful places and things you've seen and things you've done as a photographer, even through your church and things.
Yeah, through my church, I was able to go to, through the Kingdom Expansion Division, to Malaysia and Bolivia, China, Taiwan, Jamaica, all around the world, and that was really cool because while I was in each of these places, I got to see some very special places. And in Malaysia too, they were having it's almost like our bicentennial in 1976, for example. We had these huge bicentennial gatherings and parades and all that kind of stuff, and I was involved in their national one, so I was right behind the president of Malaysia, from his box as he's watching the parade, and I had free reign to go anywhere I wanted, even amongst the people as their participants as they were going in the parade. And that was really special, to be able to go there and photograph the people and so on. And I've just been blessed to just do a ton of different things through long haul productions, shooting semis and softball players and baseball players at, the Twins and the North Stars and the Wild, and just so many different events, and just countless. You name it, I've shot it. And
absolutely.
To go to the St. Thomas Islands with watercraft division and be able to shoot boats and stuff there was just spectacular.
Yeah, and certainly plenty in the motorcycle industry and all sorts of things. It's again, I don't think a lot of people realize is all the different things you get involved with as a pro shooter. So that's very fascinating.
Right. And one of the disadvantages I've had too is as things have rolled over to social media. Because I shoot a lot of prototype stuff, I haven't been able to put things on social media like they do today. And,
absolutely.
You couldn't even tell where what location you were.
Yep.
That you were even leaving to go there or getting, it's all secret stuff. And so it's quite a bit after the fact of you actually photographing it that you can even talk about it at all. So that's been a little bit of my disadvantage for social media.
Anyway. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you've had an inside look on so many innovations, certainly in the snowmobile industry, but even beyond, so different things that are not yet ready for the public's eyes to see. Sure. You're there capturing the images. So when that brand can release it, the images that the world sees are your stuff, whether it's on a billboard going down Interstate 35 or whether it's on a brochure or whatever it is. It's pretty exciting.
It sure is. Yeah, I'm just, like I said, just blessed. The life I've been given, and the first person to shoot the Royal Star motorcycle, the Victory motorcycle, the first one to shoot anything is just really something special.
Yeah.
Have to be involved in that.
Absolutely. So, you're one of my favorite people in the world, and you and I could talk forever, but I know some of our listeners probably have other things to do. So let's wrap this up. We're not expecting you to go anywhere soon. I'm not trying to shove you off the edge of the planet here, but because this kind of sounds like a career capping kind of question, but when it does become time to hang up the Nikons, if you will, how do you want people to remember Wayne Davis and your contributions to our sport?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be remembered as a person that gave back a lot. I really try hard to help people along, and so on. And that's very important to me. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that I was always there, for all over through these years. I didn't miss any shoots. I was always there, always able to, answer the bell, whether I was hurt or not. I was always at the photo shoots. There's times up in St. Donat, where I had food poisoning, but I made it every day, to the photo shoots, and I'm dependable, and I'd like to be remembered that I did my job, did it to the best of my ability, and cared about every single thing I ever photographed.
Yes, and it shows in the work, and I've been with you when you've been coming off some of those injuries and food poisonings and stuff, and you're right, you always answered the bell, but not only did you answer the bell, you came out and still created the best imagery that was possible. So truly a spectacular career, but again, don't be going anywhere. I depend on you too much. So again, we've been talking to Wayne Davis, Hall of Fame photographer for the snowmobile industry and so many other things. Wayne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, John, so much for this opportunity. It's sure a pleasure to be able to tell my story and to be involved in something like this. It's very much a pleasure. Thank you.
And it's summer now, but soon we'll be shooting sleds again.
I'm looking forward to that.
Perfect. Thanks, Wayne.
Bye.